Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenmara.com, a small town mystic in the middle of Idaho. And tonight is the episode, or show if you will, called Myth and Tarot. This is where I will introduce you to a creature from the mythological world, and then we will do a general Celtic cross just to see where that creature could be, if they're real, if you believe in them, if you don't. Tonight's more for just a little bit of fun, but also to give some history, because some of these creatures actually have had serious investigations done on them. For example, the one that we are going to go over tonight. And there are some links in the description for some of the stuff that I will talk about. If you're interested in those, you can find those in the description of the video. Otherwise, we'll get started. And I do have a couple of pictures as we go through here to just give you an idea of kind of the imagery that's been portrayed over the years. So, tonight I want to talk about the Yeti. And not the cup or the cooler, the abominable snowman version. So, did you ever want to hike in the Himalayan mountain range? Nice visit to Asia, go for a little hike, and bam! Ape-like footprints. Huge. Walking away from your tent. That has been the experience of more than one adventurer in the mountain ranges over there. So, the Yeti has been described as being covered in white or gray hair or fur. Some reports say brown, but personally I just don't quite feel that that's right. I could be wrong. I haven't seen one, so I don't know. And I'll explain a little bit more about why I don't think the brown is quite accurate in a couple of minutes. There have been claims that the Yeti has huge, sharp teeth, which doesn't surprise me, since their diet is primarily meat-based, considering where they live in the upper elevations, and there's not a lot of plants that live there. There are a few, but probably not enough to feed these type of creatures. The name, loosely interpreted in Tibetan, means rocky place bear or rocky bear. There's other names which we will attempt these. One is Micah, fairly easy, which interprets to man-bear. There's Migo, or Merka, which is wild man, all variations of the name wild man. And some legends state to see it. Some legends. What did I just put down here? My notes. Okay. There are some legends, there we go, that say to see one is a portent of your own death. I have a hard time with that one, because there's a lot of people that have seen him and went to live a normal length of life, to be 70, 80 years old and not die. But that is part of the theory. Excuse me, sorry. Another name that they use, which is describing a snowman, is Kang Admi. Different cultures, different places. The M's are pretty much all from Tibet and the Himalayan areas. I think Kang Admi was from another part of Asia. I didn't put a note down. I do apologize. In Tibet, their lore has that there are 3 different classes of Yeti. There is the Nyalmo, which is black fur. They stand around 15 feet tall. They're the biggest and tend to be the most ferocious of the Yetis. And by the most ferocious, from what I read, they were the ones that were tearing tents apart and throwing people down the mountain. Then you have the Shuti, which is about 8 feet tall. They live over 8,000 feet above sea level, and they have been seen as high as 10,000 feet above sea level. These ones usually are what we would classify as what we see in the movies. They're the ones with the wider fur and tend to be a little bit more muscular. Then you have the Rong Shim Bombo, fun name to say, which is the reddish brown or auburn hair around 3 to 5 feet tall. Now, I'm going to grab a drink. What I found probably the most interesting, but not too surprising, is that the legends of the Yeti or the abominable snowman, or pick one of the various names I've already mentioned, extend significantly beyond the Tibetan areas. For example, in the Russian area of Siberia, primarily that area, they have one called the Chakana, which is a beast that stands as tall as 7 feet, covered in dark fur, and some stories have them with an exceptionally long tail up to 5 feet. And it's prehensile, so they can't actually control its movement. Other legends state that a Neanderthal-type man is covered in pelts will occasionally eat human flesh, so the name Chakana applies to both. The other name for the Russian version is the I didn't write the phonetics on this. Almasty, or Almasty, something like that. And there has been genetic testing on this one, and it states that it's a version of hominid related to the Neanderthal. The interesting part about that one is they actually claimed to have found a female version of the Chakana or the Almasty, and there is some documentation that she actually birthed children around this one civilization in Siberia, and that's where they were able to do the testing that they were doing. So that was kind of an interesting little side note there. Almost every continent on the planet has a myth like this. The one exception, and I think it's just because we haven't explored enough of it yet, is Antarctica. They claim that there's no life like this on Antarctica. Who knows? Australia has one called the Yowie, which I thought that was a fun name too. In China, it's the Yeren, and Scotland, it's the Ferlesmore, and Sumatra has the Orang Pendek. I didn't write the phonetics down. Mapingari in Brazil, and there are some crossovers with the Sasquatch that we associate with North America more so, but that's a topic for another day. So, let me introduce where the term abominable snowman came from. In 1921, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury led a British Mount Everest recon trek, which he chronicled in his book, which is linked below. And let me see what the name of the book was. I can't remember. It is Mount Everest: The Reconnaissance. So, something to think about if you're ever interested in reading a little bit more. And when I say a little bit, I believe it's like 400 pages. So it's not just a little. He describes finding footprints at about 21,000 feet above sea level that looked, as he described them, as double imprinted wolf prints. There's no pictures that I could find of what he saw. They might be in the book, therefore probably not easily found on the internet. His Sherpa guide told him that those were the prints of the wild man of the snow. Over time, the names snowman and man-bear morphed into a basically really bad translation, because the term snowman, man-bear has a word very similar to the term filthy in Tibetan, and he misinterpreted it as the filthy man. And so he changed it from filthy to abomination. That's how he ended up at abominable. Really, it was meant to be the man who lives in snow, or the man-bear that lives in snow. Don't you love how languages change? There have been reports, articles, and multiple books written since 1832, approximately. Some have pics of footprints and random pieces of skin that they've claimed to be from Yetis of different classes. I'm not going to go over every claim of the sighting. There's almost as many Yeti sightings as there are Sasquatch, or about half. That number is half of what there are of alien encounters. So it's a big number. And that's just going over the names of the stories and articles of people who have witnessed it. This is not like some of the other ones, like a Selkie. Find somebody in the modern world who has seen a Selkie. But it's more common to find someone who has seen something like a Yeti. So they're not as hidden as one might think. What I did find interesting, and I'm really weird with what catches my attention. When I was researching this, that there's been DNA tests done on various samples that contain DNA that does not match even similar to any known primate, hominid, or other species. There have been claims that the DNA is similar to various bears, and that's of certain pieces that they've picked up. Like there's one that's a hand bone that looks a lot like a bear, and DNA testing says it's one of the various bears that lives in the area, one of which is the Himalayan brown bear, which is the Rangshim bombo, the reddish brown or auburn form of Yeti. That's where I was going with that, is I feel like that might be an actual bear and not a Yeti. Just being honest with you. There have been other claims that some of the hair that they found has been from domestic dogs. So the skeptics claim that's what every single sighting has always been, is it's either a bear or a dog. And there is a bear that lives in that area, and I didn't write down the name, but that because when it's younger, it's not very strong, and so it's kind of a prey animal, and they develop on their feet opposable thumbs. And so all four of their limbs have opposable thumbs because they climb trees until they're 2 years old, 3 years old. And so they develop this really distinctive footprint, but it's not the same as what they are finding with the Yetis. But that is something that the skeptics are using to say that, oh, there's no such thing, it's just this one bear. Yeah, probably not. Anyway. But there are still questions. And that's the problem, is you still have unknown DNA that they're finding, even though a lot of it does help identify the bears in the area, which they thought some of them were extinct. You're not finding some of this DNA doesn't match anything we know about yet. So, and so there may be something that roams around in those freezing, cold mountains. There's a theory that I'm interested in, and I ran across this doing the research for this, and I'd heard something similar before about the North American Sasquatch, and that is the Yeti might be thought to be extinct hominid species, like a missing link type species, but just still happens to be around. Which it could be a species of like a human hominid, or it could be an unknown species of bear that has human-like features, which would be odd, or an upright primate, which also would be a little bit closer to the hominid if we're going to go there. It's an interesting theory, and it's been put forth by only a couple of people because it's kind of not too popular to talk about. Let's see here. So, looking at some of the Tibetan legends, and this is where it gets interesting. A lot of the Tibetan people, when they spoke about the Yetis, claimed that they were very friendly and helpful. Here is an artist's rendition. It's actually a picture of somebody from a play that they were acting out over there in that area. They would dedicate themselves to ending the suffering of others and doing whatever they could to be helpful to those seeking enlightenment, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at life. The old myths have them helping travelers through the Himalayas, kind of like a Sherpa. They are animalistic, but more than animals. Some of them couldn't quite speak, so they were human, not quite human, but they were still very sentient. What else do I got here? Did you know that at one point, and I didn't realize this, I thought it was pretty cool, that Yetis were actually worshipped as deities. They were basically mountain gods. According to H. Seeger, he claims he was told the Lepcha people in pre-19th century Himalaya worshipped a glacier being as a god of the hunt. This deity carried large stone weapons and supposedly would whistle as it roamed about. So here's a little walking Yeti for you. Because of the veneration, this is kind of how they made their way into the Tibetans' version of Buddhism as part of their beliefs. They were considered to be more like an intelligent animal, like a sentient primate. They could practice Dharma, which is their practice of searching for enlightenment, and could help as disciples to holy men. And in a lot of cases, they would be like they would do the laundry for the holy men. They'd wash the dishes. They'd tend the gardens. They would actually sometimes cook if they could be trained to cook. So they were significantly functional beings in this particular practice. Some myths said that they were actually guardian spirits. So they'd come through from the ether basically to protect the holy men against the darkness that was always trying to attack them, which I thought was pretty cool. Others claimed they were tools of Dharma, so this was holding people accountable and bringing them into balance. And to see one meant your act needed to be cleaned up, because if you saw one, they're probably coming for you. So just something to think about if you happen to see one roaming around. Modern day versions tend to be scary. Ooh, so scary. Because of the mistranslation of snowman or bear man into filthy man, now we have abominable snowman. So there's that. And that has led to some very entertaining movies and, oddly enough, video games. There's an old Rankin and Bass, which is the old stop-motion claymation type cartoon, which was the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And that's a good example of a bad to good version. If you remember watching that when you were younger, or we just left Christmas recently, they had the Bumble snow monster in there. And that was their abominable snowman. And he starts off being scary and evil, and then Yukon Cornelius pulls all his teeth, and suddenly he's a gentle Bumble and all that. It's a fun movie, but that is, again, some of the modern interpretations of the abominable snowman. What I thought was funny, because I remember playing this game, it was a video game, but I didn't put two and two together, is there's actually a part in the old Zelda games where a couple, a husband and wife Yeti, were actually part of the game. And I didn't even click until I was looking through some images that went along with it. Of course, I'm not showing those because I want to grow my channel, not get it copyrighted. Okay, so I'm not going to leave this one out since it is fun to me and personally. And what's been going on lately with this particular company, I am not impressed with. And they have had an amazing history, but whoever's in charge now is not impressing me at all. And they're pulling some less than appropriate stuff. And that is in Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons, in the role-playing game. There is a campaign, and I believe it's The Secrets of the Frost Maiden. It's one of the newer ones. There's a stream on YouTube that I do watch every so often called Geeks and Gamers, and they have a tabletop one, so you actually have people playing. And I never thought this would be possible because I've played D&D in person, and it's not something that you would really put on a video, but they figured out how to do it through the Wizards of the Coast website, and I think it's Wizards, it might be someone else, but it's pretty fun. And they have a Secrets of the Frost Maiden campaign that they usually do. The best part about it is they have Yetis in it, and the Yetis in D&D are definitely made scary. There is a link in the description if you're into painting your own figurines and stuff like that. But I linked one of the images because one of the guys likes to paint figures, and so he was talking about this one image of this little statue of a Yeti, and he absolutely loved it. So I put a link in the description if you're interested. But those are just a few of the pop culture references. When I was digging around, I found so many. There's a Yeti miniature I put in the description, and then also the other one, and I thought this was funny, especially when you watch the show. There's the what was going on with it was the entertaining part, but the movie Monsters Inc. from many moons ago, they have an abominable snowman in there, a Yeti, and don't eat the yellow snow was part of the joke there. And when you were little, you probably didn't get it. Now that you're older, you'll watch it and be like, they put that in a kids show, what is going on here? So it's still there, and we're still seeing it as fun loving. We're still seeing the Yetis as something enjoyable, nothing to be scared of. Other times you're looking for something that's going to terrify you. There are, like I said, a pile of amazing horror films out there that have abominable snowmen and Yetis, so it's what you're interested in. If you're looking for something spooky, the Yeti has it. If you're looking for something kid-friendly, the Yeti has it. If you're looking for something that's just kind of out there in left field, you could probably find something about it with a Yeti. So, let's check here to see what's chat's going. Okay. With that, bring up my other little notes here, because as much as I like to read tarot, I still struggle trying to remember certain layouts. There's some layouts I have down pat. For some weird reason, and I don't know why, the Celtic Cross is not one of them. So we will do a little Celtic Cross reading for the species of the Yeti. And this is more for just for fun and see what happens. I did one 2 weeks ago because this is my second and fourth weekend or Monday stream is what we're doing. And I did the one for the Selkies, and it actually it was entertaining in the fact that it talked about the Yeti or the Selkies coming back into the consciousness of humanity by the end of it. Well, that was pretty cool because they're kind of an obscure piece of Celtic Norse mythology, and if you're not from the culture or you haven't read certain books about the fairy realm, you probably have never heard of a Selkie, which if you want to check out the playlist that I started for Myth and Tarot, that is where you will find the one about the Selkie. So tonight we're going to do a reading just to see where the myths, legends, and stories of the Yeti are. And what do I got here? I need one more card. Like I said, this is more just for fun. But it is entertaining just to kind of see what comes up in these situations, because sometimes they can be really entertaining, like for the Selkies. So the first card is the Yeti as itself, and we have the 8 of Swords. So we have the 8 of Air, and this is actually, it's giving me bird feeling. The Yeti is a creature of cold, obviously, but the swords are speaking of truth. So there is some truth coming forward, but it's an eternal truth. Being 8, it's the infinity symbol. And what this is saying is there's some chaos swirling around the Yeti. People may not know what's going on. Are they real? Are they fake? And the poor Yeti is like, we're right here. We've always been here. It's just you guys don't know what we are. So they're looking for some answers as to why people don't believe that they exist when they're part of the culture in that area. So the obstacle or challenge, that which crosses, is the Emperor. So there is basically a really strong male figure that is saying, we are going to keep these things hidden. We're going to keep these creatures secret. We do not want them part of the public domain, which could be that lieutenant colonel who was trying to downplay the entire group, or it could be any number of other groups that are trying to make, these mythological beings not real, the skeptics, so to speak. So you've got that as the energy of what's crossing the poor Yetis. Now, let's see here. The influences, the higher self, is the Four of Chalices. They're pretty much laissez-faire. They don't really care. They want you to know that they're real, but they're not going to fight you about it. They're pretty much like, meh, whatever. We're here. You believe in us or not, we'll still, shake you out of your sleeping bag when you're on the hike to the mountains. So they just their higher self is pretty much like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Their subconscious mind, that which is below, is the Three of Chalices. So they, underneath everything, they're just looking to be friends. They're looking for companionship, but they still have that higher self that's saying, don't worry about it. Humans are just humans. They're going to do their own thing. So let's see what's going on in the Yeti's past. It's the Nine of Chalices. There's a lot of water going on here. And the Nine of Chalices is their past was one of fun, and it looks, what's coming up is they had this really glorious past with the Tibetan people and the surrounding cultures. I mean, they were worshipped as deities, so of course they're going to enjoy it. But they even at being a deity, they were still there to help, and they were here to serve, and they just had a really good life. I mean, as good as you can have in that kind of freezing cold. I'm not a cold person, so to me that just sounds miserable. But they were enjoying their lifestyle. It's probably a lot like a husky. You'd rather be out in the snow than in the house. So, where are we at here? The future card, so this is their immediate future, is the Two of Swords. Well, it looks like they're having some fun. They're starting to reconnect and maybe making some new friends. And they're really, what this card is really saying is that there's some truth coming forward. And in that friendliness that's going on, the truth is going to be revealed through communication and through friendship. So let's look at the attitude of the Yeti is the King of Pentacles. So you've got the end of the final end of the earth signs. And this is really saying that their attitude is pretty grounded, pretty stable. They really don't care what you think. They exist in their minds, and that's what counts. And they're getting those connections back. They're starting to come back into the more positive aspect of who they are. It's not just the, ooh, scary, it's the abominable snowman. They're starting to get that grounding back into the more neutral state, if not positive. So let's look at their environment. It's the Six of Pentacles. So their environment may not be for everybody. And this card is saying that they live in a very cold, harsh climate, and that's okay for them. But they don't really care if you don't like it. And they'd rather actually prefer that you didn't like it and didn't show up. They like the group of people that they're with, and they just, as far as they're concerned in their little environmental world, they're good there, and you just stay out. And that's kind of the energy that's coming up. So their hopes and fears is the Four of Pentacles. So this goes back to the other two cards. They're really just saying, we like where we're at, and we have the friends that matter to us here. If you want to come and introduce yourself, great, but we're just kind of good here. We don't really need the outside stuff, and their fear is exploitation. They don't even, That's the reason that they hide when the Westerners especially show up, is they don't want to be exploited. You want to show up and you want us to work with you on the Dharma? Great. You want us to help you understand enlightenment? Awesome. You want us to help work around the monasteries? Great. But we're not going to go be in a zoo. We're not doing any of that. So that's kind of where their fears and their hopes are. So the overall outcome for this is the One of Pentacles. The Yetis have a new beginning, and it's a new grounded beginning. A new beginning in growth and a new beginning in their lives. So they've got this newer energy coming in saying, it's time for everybody to start to basically be reminded that they exist, that they're real. So you've got this energy of the One of Pentacles coming up saying, your home, you have a new home, a new ideology that's coming forward. So you have all this new energy that's coming up. And you had all that water that's surrounding them, and that was their emotional state. So you have all this, you're working through the negative and heavier emotions because you're moving into this new beginning for the Yetis. So, hopefully you found that at least a little bit entertaining. The Yetis are actually kind of an interesting set of creatures to me because there's a little bit of truth behind what their existence is, and there is, again, everything with me is a grain of salt. There is some evidence of research that says that there's something out there. They just don't know what it is. There is people who claim that it's just a form of a bear that lives in the area. There's other people that have had actual connections and sightings that they can't explain as simply a local bear or a local primate. There's a group of people, actually, when I was doing my research for this, that claims and they claim this like hand-on Bible type claim it, that what people are seeing with the Yeti is just a gigantic orangutan. Not one single description has this creature having orange hair, and orangutans tend to be more jungle-ish, less snow-capped mountains. I mean, there's a possibility. I don't know everything there is to know about orangutans, the concept that a Yeti might exist. So, what are your thoughts? Please share in the comments section below. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Yetis are real? Do you think that there's something there? Or is it just the way people were dressed to avoid the cold and it was misinterpreted? Please like the video and share it if you think someone might enjoy this crazy little video series I'm doing here. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Every little bit helps grow the channel. I'm just trying to, see where we can go with this. Any comments, suggestions, or even criticisms, you can drop them in the comment section below. My only request is that we stay civilized with that. I think we all could use a little bit more civility in the world. With that, I will let you guys go, and I hope you have an awesome evening, and I will talk to you again later.